Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a program on changing the narrative, coaching skills for leaders. If you're here, because I don't know unless you tell me, would you go ahead and put your name and where you're from in the comments section? I'm going to check in intermittently and I'm going to get right down to business. So let me know where you're here and where you're from. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So today it's about changing the narrative, coaching skills for leaders. And the reason I wanted to do this one at the first of the year is because we're always ready for that fresh start at the beginning of a year. And we have these desires to change something, to set a New Year's resolution. And we're filming this right toward the end of January 2024. And it occurred to me when I was doing my New Year's work that no matter how many fresh starts we create, we sometimes come to realize that the old story just continues to create more of what we don't want. So, today, what I want to do is explore four things that you need to know about shifting your narrative and how this skill transfers to coaching your employees. And I learned some of this when I took a course in narrative coaching, and it was really a life changer. It was some things I know, and the depth of it helped me to practice it more. It may be some things you know, but it might be great for a refresher. But the spin I want to put on this today is twofold. I want to first give you the overview of each point. There's 4 points today. Then I want to give you the application for your own life, your personal life, and then the application for coaching others. So I'm going to check in real fast. Hi there, Teresa. Hi, Tanis. I'm seeing a few other people come in that says LinkedIn user. So please let me know you're here, and I'll check in to see if there's questions as we go forward. So I'm going to start with showing you the overview of what we're going to do today. And this is the overview of the 4 different points. I'm going to go deeper into each one. So the first one is that the story is the source of your suffering. The story is the source of your suffering. The second point is that new behaviors require new stories. Third, self-regulation is required for creating new stories. This is extremely important in knowing how to change your story, but also in knowing when it's time to coach someone and when it's time to draw back. And then finally, you can only coach a regulated person. So those are the 4 points. We're going to go in order. I'll check in here and there just to say hi to people and see who's here from all over the country as usual. So I'm going to start with number 1. Your story is the source of your suffering. If you really let this sink in, it's profound. Your story is the source of your suffering. The question is, what is the story in your head? What are you telling yourself, about other people? What are you telling yourself about the current situation? Because that's what's going to create the suffering more than the person or the situation. One way that I start to notice the story when I'm coaching, or even when I'm trying to coach myself, I listen for the words I am, because that's going to uncover a story. I'm too old. It's too late. I'm not smart enough. I'm an introvert, or I'm a high D on the disc. I can't tell you how many times there's been someone that has some bullying tendencies, and the way they justify it is, well, I'm a high D on the disc, so everybody needs to understand that. And so often we use these personality assessments not for information to become more self aware. We use it to justify something where we need to grow personally or professionally. So listen to the I am statements that you say. Someone corrected me the other day. I went to something really fun. I went to a belly dancing class. I love dance, all kinds. So I was experiencing this. And I said something about, yeah, this belly's big enough to belly dance. And I was just kind of joking. And another woman said, we women should not discount our bodies. We shouldn't make things about, the focus on our physical appearance. And I said, you know what? Yeah, thank you for that. That's so true. I was just kind of joking around, but the very notion that I'm talking about something like that says that there is a story hiding somewhere, even though it was sort of a joke. So listen to the I am statements to start uncovering your own and other people's stories. Now, if you want to listen to your employees, you'll hear these other hints. So I'm going to share the hints and then I'm going to give you the application for you and then for coaching. You're going to hear living in the past. There's someone in my life that I know, it's a family member, and all they do is talk about glory days, the past 30 years ago. And I really love to come from the place that Dan Sullivan says, which is make your future bigger than your past. So if you're looking backwards at high school or when you won an award or when you were at the height of your career and you don't think there's anything else, that's going to create suffering for you because you're not seeing a future possibility. Then there's blame. Anytime there's this lack of personal responsibility or blame, absence of choice, disrespect, those are the ones living in the past, blame, absence of choice, disrespect. When you hear that from someone's language, I want you to immediately think there's a story there. There's a story. I'm going to listen to that because when people are in blame, they don't see their choices and they want to justify their bad luck, their circumstance on something that happened. And here's the distinction: something did happen. There are facts. But all we can do is take responsibility for the present moment and our choices moving forward. When we stay stuck in blame, it's because there's a story operating in the background that maybe wants to be acknowledged, wants to be expressed. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging a story. But if we're going to coach someone, we have to create a new framework. So I'm going to share with you a couple of applications, but I want you to know this, that as a leader, you have to really become aware of, of irresponsible language. I call it irresponsible language. That's what I listen for. It's my red flag. People will often say to me, you seem so intuitive. And I am intuitive and I do have intuitive hits, but I also have learned some listening skills to identify quickly when there's something at a root cause that hasn't been identified instead of trying to fix someone, trying to really understand what's underneath the behavior. So, this type of irresponsible language indicates a lack of empowerment, and it's the inability to see the choice. I often say that responsibility is the recognition of choice. That's the first step of responsibility, is just recognizing the choice. Then it's about accepting the choice. Then it's about the consequences of the choice, knowing that you chose. So it's the responsibility of choice. And then I also say that when you find your choice, you find your power. So knowing that about responsibility can help you so much with coaching others. And you don't need to tell people this, but you need to know it and kind of make a check note in your mind. If you argue with someone who's in a story, you're only going to get resistance. And if any of you know my work, I talk about the boat, the island, and the shark, with the shark being the obstacle. And that when you're trying to coach someone who's stuck on their obstacles, it almost sounds like my shark, but you don't understand my shark. When that happens, you're in a state of resistance with the other person and they can't be coached. So I want you to realize that, because I really do think that leadership is going to require a certain amount of coaching skills for the future. I think that the old days of just being a manager, I think those are gone. We're going to have to learn how to coach other people and coach ourselves. So the application for personal life is this: what may be holding you back could be your framework. What's holding you back could be your framework. Here's an example. When I started writing my book, From Conflict to Courage, I started seeing all this avoidance, and I saw that every conversation, that every big problem in an organization that escalated could be traced back to a conversation that should have happened but didn't. Then I asked myself why. And I thought, it's the story we tell ourselves about conflict. We see conflict as win lose. We see conflict as a battle. We see conflict as being enemies with someone. But when we shift the story about conflict, and I'm not saying make conflict a wonderful thing or even embrace it, but when we change the narrative and we say, well, you know what, conflict is really opposing drives, desires, and demands, then we see like sort of two arrows going in opposite directions. When we start to program our mind to see conflict as opposing drives, desires, and demands, we stop making other people the enemy and we get curious. I wonder what their desire is. I wonder what the demand is. I wonder what drives their motives. So when you change the narrative, you start to change the experience that you're having. So pay attention to what you think about someone, something, some concept, and play around with different types of ways to define those things. So the application for coaching is you must know when someone is focused on the obstacles. If they're focused on the obstacles, chances are they're dysregulated. And if they're not regulated, they're really going to be difficult to coach. So I'm going to take a quick pause. I'm going to check in. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to show who's here. Hi there, Lynette and Amy and Shreya and from the Czech Republic. That's exciting. What time is it there, I wonder? Hi there, La Crystal and Mexico City. So we're getting some people. I see a bunch that says LinkedIn user, so we must not be connected on LinkedIn. But if you want to follow me, your name will probably show up next time. So I'm going to go into the second one, the second concept here, and that is that new behaviors require new stories. Behaviors always mirror the internal narrative. I've got a little slide I want to show you if I can find it. Let's see, here we go. There it is. Mirrors behave the narrative. So I wanted to show you this. This is also on a learning guide that you can get if you go to my website, and let me show you the quick little banner for where that is in case you want to get it. If you go to marlenechisholm.com/office hours, you can get this learning guide. You'll have to sign up. It'll be delivered. It'll pop up. We're going to start a little membership site here before long where we're putting some of the best content. But this is what you need to know about behavior and story. If I already know what he or she is going to say, then I avoid the conversation. If I think it's too difficult, then I don't try, or I might try and find that I'm not asking for help because I already believe it's difficult. So I'm going to create more of that. If I'm the only one who can do it right, and man, I've had this one, I have so had this one. It's a little bit of superiority. It's a little bit of a coping mechanism. It is a lack of delegation, this unwillingness to train and be patient with other people. So when we, especially as entrepreneurs like I am, if you get into the idea that no one can do it like me, you're going to struggle because you're not going to have help. Or I have to be perfect, or I believe in perfectionism. And I've seen this one a lot. And what that causes is procrastination or even poor decision making. And I was sharing with a client the other day, and I say this to a lot of clients, it's not about perfection, it's about course correction, because we're not perfect. And if we really adhere to perfection, there's a difference between excellence and perfection. So I'm all about excellence, but perfection, I threw that out long ago. I'm always going to make a mistake. There's going to be people better than me at certain things. So really try to work on that narrative and find out where that came from, that desire or that need to be perfect, that belief that if you're not perfect, you're not going to keep your job or you're not going to get elevated. I just think the more humility you have about your strengths and weaknesses, life just gets more fun and it gets easy. So, as a leader, you have to elevate your own language. And the more, this is what I've discovered, the more you work on yourself, the easier it's going to be to coach others. So, here's the application for your personal life. You can't create a new behavior from an old story. That's why when you know to create a different behavior and it doesn't click, it's because there's really a deep story and narrative that you're adhering to that's operating in the subconscious mind. But by just a little observation, you can notice it and then you can fix it. Here's the application for coaching others. What is the behavior that needs to change? That's the question you're going to ask. And so often we work only at the behavioral level, and sometimes it does work and the behavior can change the story. There's that theory, and I've seen that happen. But I've also seen it happen to where someone has tried so hard and they just can't make the change. So there's got to be a narrative that's keeping them stuck. What would the other need to believe in order to adopt the preferred behavior? How would they need to interpret the situation? What would they need to believe? It's really difficult to seek behavior change if you don't understand the underlying driving force, and understanding stories can help you do this. Okay, so I see some more comments. I'm going to check in. Hi, Dan, friend of mine. Good to see you. Oh, you're in Indianapolis today. Awesome. And Ryan from South Carolina, Prague. Barbara, hi there. Someone from Canada, from Toronto, and someone that knows Dan. Hi there, everybody. Thanks for being here. So let's look at what we've done so far. Let's see. We've done the story is the source of your suffering and new behaviors require new stories. So that's where, if you're just joining us, that's what we've done. You can get the learning guide at marlenechisholm.com/office hours. Now I'm going to head into number 3. Self-regulation is required for creating a new story. This was a game changer for me because I've tried to create new stories when I've been upset or angry or felt justified. And the truth is, you have to self regulate first. And I always say regulation before resolution. That's one of my sayings now on any kind of conflict, whether it's internal just with yourself or with whether it's with another person or a situation. Find a way to get regulated. Then your decision making is so much better. When you're unregulated, your emotions are in the driver's seat. The amygdala takes control. It hijacks your brain, and you operate from this back part of your brain that's often referred to as the reptilian brain. You behave as if you're in survival mode because that's what that back brain wants to do, just wants to survive. It feels threatened, and now there's no critical thinking. It's not uncommon for clients and employees alike to experience an emotional outburst and justify their behavior when they're in that primal brain by saying, look, I'm just being authentic, or you're just too sensitive. That's how it gets justified. And it makes sense. Well, they are being authentic. They do that all the time. And maybe I am sensitive. But the point is, we can be authentic to that primal brain, or we can be authentic to the higher thinking function. And that's just a choice we make in advance. That although I feel like throwing a temper tantrum and that would truly be authentic to how I feel, I'm also authentic to my values. So once you start changing that narrative of, yeah, I feel that way, that would be authentic. It's also authentic for me to take a break, to really organize my thoughts, to sit down and think about what I want, and to maintain the relationship. So we make a lot of excuses with a lot of platitudes and sayings like being authentic. But I think we just have to decide who we are. And I'm all about living by your values. And I don't really know that most people understand that to the depth they need to. But here's what I'm going to say about being a leader. You really can't afford to make excuses for harsh or bullying behavior if you want to be a good example to others. I created a video series on anger management on LinkedIn Learning. If you have a subscription and you haven't had that one, go try that one out. But I made the following point. People often, when I'm coaching with them, if they are someone that gets kind of wound up or angry or they're fast to react, they'll say, I've been told I have an anger problem. And that is what it looks like on the surface. It's an anger problem. But what they mean is they've not been able to control their temperament or the outbursts. And as a result, it has cost them opportunities and relationships, or it's causing them embarrassment because they position themselves as emotional and illogical. So that's the problem. But I often say, the application for life is that it's not really an anger problem. So I want you to hear how I'm rephrasing and reframing this so that there's a different energy around anger. It's not an anger problem. It's a self-awareness problem. It's a problem of not asking for what you want, or it's an inability to enforce a boundary. So all these skills can help you to regulate, because if we start to be ashamed of the dark side whenever we get angry, if we pretend that we aren't angry and we suppress it, I don't get angry. No. And then it leaks out in sarcasm. It leaks out in playing games, manipulating. It's okay to be angry. Anger is just an energy that wants to go somewhere, but it's telling you where you need to grow. I've kind of struggled with some of this in my life, so I have a lot of compassion. I tend to work with people that are highly aggressive, high Ds, assertive, moving fast. And the good news is that I've worked on this. I know it can shift. I know that you can learn how to regulate and interpret differently. So I really advocate for not making someone into a demon or a beast because they seem to have an anger problem. It's almost always this lack of awareness of what's triggering them, or the way that they're following a narrative in their head about something. And I was talking to a scientist a few days ago, and I said, I'm not a scientist, but what I do know from all the research I've done in neuroscience and psychology, I know that most of us are pretty much programmed 8-year-olds trying to untangle all the shifts and problems that we had in our childhood. So if you can have that kind of compassion, if you're just kind of easygoing, it's just a different wiring. And if you're the type that gets emotional or angry, you can rewire your brain. It's truly about awareness and noticing your narrative. Here's the application for coaching. You have to learn how to regulate yourself when you're coaching someone else. You cannot take on their issues. You can't get angry because of their anger. You can't want to fix or make it subside when they are having an emotional experience. You have to be, I call it the witness. You have to hold space for someone to feel what they feel, not trigger them further and not try to discount it. You need to brush it off. You're being too sensitive. It's really not that bad. You don't need to make someone happy. It's okay that someone is not happy. That is their experience right now. It's not your job to fix their emotional regulation. So, what you have to do is you first have to regulate yourself, and you have to notice when others are unregulated so that you can give effective feedback and coach their performance. Once someone is regulated and they trust you, it's like magic, and they get so excited whenever you can help them shift a narrative or a behavior. So, are there any questions? If there are, I'll check in. I'm not seeing any right now, seeing a couple new people pop in. Okay, we're going to go then to the fourth piece of this, and that is that you can only coach a regulated person. When someone is angry with you, they're getting heated, and this is going to happen. We're getting ready here in the USA for a presidential election, and it's going to get nasty. And we all got so worn out from it last time. All the vitriol that was on social media, the disrespect that was being pushed out there, and we're just getting desensitized to it. And I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I can even pay that much attention to it anymore. It is extremely draining and exhausting. So we have to understand that when we're yelling on social media, so to speak, you're not going to change anyone's mind. I've never heard someone say, you calling me a name, a filthy liberal or a crazy right winger. I've never heard someone go, you know what? Thank you for that. It's made me change my mind on my political views. You only create dysregulation. You only spark anger. So just understand that you're not going to change anyone's mind when they're not regulated, and you're not going to change when you're not. So when someone's angry with you, you're not going to influence them until they maintain a sense of calm. And if an employee that you don't understand, if you don't understand their point of view, you're not going to be able to lead them. So if they continue to argue for their obstacle, my shark, you don't understand my shark, it really means that they don't feel heard. You cannot move forward. You have to, I call it radical listening. You have to learn how to practice holding your tongue, stop trying to convince, stop trying to be understood. It's more like, I hear you. You have a right to feel how you feel. And you might be saying to yourself at this point, well, I'm not really a leader, but I want you to realize that we all lead in some capacity, from being a C suite executive to a supervisor to the chair on a committee to even a parent. We're all leading at various times and in different capacities, depending on how what your narrative is about what it means to lead. So here's the application for personal life. After I finish this, I'm going to show you the whole thing just in case you're just joining. This will be recorded. You can also share this on your thread if you got value today. That way it's on your thread. You can watch it again if you missed part of it. And I'd love to hear your comments about this later. But here's the application for personal life, in that you can only coach a regulated person. Don't get triggered by someone else's anger. Decide not to engage no matter how much you want to. You won't make the situation better when the other person is unregulated. Now, here's your application for coaching. You have to meet people where they are. You cannot coach someone until they're calm and ready to listen to your message. You have to allow the emotion to pass. It might take a day. Sometimes there's a refractory period when someone's angry, depending on how much they've worked on this. For some people, it might take a week. Others, it might take an hour or 5 minutes. So you have to just kind of read the room a little bit, but you have to allow the emotion to pass, because here's the deal. Until someone feels heard, they're going to be mentally stuck, and it's unlikely you're going to effectively shift the energy or direction of the conversation. Instead, what's going to happen is you're going to get caught in this game of verbal ping pong, and you're going to wonder what happened. I was just trying to help. You're going to wonder what happened. What happened was the other person or you were out of regulation. So that's what happened. There was anger, there was energy, there was frustration, and someone tried to fix the situation. So what I call this in my release resistance program is, you're resisting their resistance. You tried to shift their mood instead of allowing them to feel what they feel. And the bottom line is that you can't create a new narrative or help others from a state of mind drama. So I'm going to show you the last slides. You can see where we've been. And then I just want to say in closing, if you have to hop off, there's no better time to create a new story than right now. And it doesn't matter what time you're listening to this, if this is 2024 in the new year, or if this is 2 years later or after the fact, there's never a better time to create a new story than the present moment, because the story you tell is the life you live. So I'm going to show you one more time the points that we covered. Your story is the source of your suffering. New behaviors require new stories. Self-regulation is required for creating new stories, and you can only coach a regulated person. Here's the learning guide if you want the learning guide. It's at marlenechisholm.com office hours. And if you just go right to that link, you can sign up and it'll look, let's see, it'll look like this. This is the web page, and you just sign up here and it will lead you to a landing page where you can download. And so that is today's program. And I thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.